Struggling low-cost airline Mango is currently in what it calls sensitive talks with South African Airways Technical to keep flights operational after non-payment of services. The SAA subsidiary says flights are currently operating as scheduled. We are now joined by SAA spokesperson Tlali Tlali to clarify the nature of the relationship between SAA Technical, SAA and Mango Airlines. Tlali, good evening and thank you so much for your time tonight. Let's just begin here. How did things get to a point where, they now play out in the public this way?
Good evening, Bongiwe, and good evening to the viewers. Thank you for the opportunity for inviting us to your program. We find ourselves where we are now largely because we are having challenges that relate to the state of finances. SAA as an airline brand is in business rescue at the moment, and the business rescue has unfolded or evolved to a point where there's a business rescue plan that is in place that needs to be implemented that requires funding. We are at a point where we are now waiting for a response to our funding requirements from the shareholder to indicate as to whether or not funding is going to be available. If funds are unlocked and are made available, we should be able to address quite a number of issues that include having working capital for the business, paying our creditors, including SAA Technical, as well as making a payment of VSPs to those employees who have elected to take VSPs who will be exiting the system. So in a nutshell, it is insofar as it relates to the relationship between SAA and SAA Technical, it is really about having enough money to be able to pay the service providers for the services that have been rendered. SAA together with Mango, Airships and SAA Technical, they form what we refer to as an SAA group, a group of companies, and all these three are subsidiaries of SAA.
And any word from the shareholder on when this will be resolved?
The shareholder is on record, and we are encouraged by the continued assurance that they are pulling all stops in order to ensure that the funding requirements of SAA are met, and the assurance goes beyond that to indicate that the SAA will not be allowed to go into liquidation. We understand that they are working round the clock, and we expect to get an indication of whether funding will become available, and if so, when. We are aware that there's a lot of anxiety right across our stakeholders, with the labor unions as well as our employees who are impacted by the situation that is currently taking place. We must also appreciate that we find ourselves in a unique environment. We are really in uncharted waters. We have never been in this particular situation before, so it will take a little bit of time to get certain things right, but we also appreciate that our employees on the ground are also feeling the heat, and the shareholder has indicated that they will do everything possible in order to ensure that funding becomes available.
And certainly for things to get to this point where SAA Technical is now threatening, to ground these flights, it means they're not owed a small amount. How much exactly are they owed, if you're able to tell us?
The amount is a little less than 100 million rands that SAA owes, and this is there's a process currently underway between the airline and SAA Technical that seeks to find a resolution or a middle path insofar as the situation is concerned. It is in the best interest of all parties that are affected by this situation that they get a resolution to this, because under the circumstances we are not really looking at a situation of winners and losers, but it becomes a situation of losers and losers. Whilst the airline, given its limited operations currently taking place where we operate chartered flights, we may be impacted by this particular decision. It goes on to also indicate that the SAA Technical if SAA is not operating, they may not also be able to generate revenue. SAA appreciates the fact that SAA Technical had to take this decision because in its own right, it is a juristic person that should also pursue its commercial interest that include to ensure that it is trading in a responsible manner where they should be able to go after the debt that is owed to them by their customers, whoever the customers are, whether they are SAA or any other entity, whoever is the customer, they need to get that money. So it's something that we appreciate. However, we are of the view that there should be other ways through which this issue should receive attention that should also satisfy the interests and give comfort to SAA Technical, who in this instance are the ones who needs to get their money back.
And of course, when you're looking at the situation, it certainly is, really concerning. And Mango coming out earlier on to say that they're holding sensitive talks with SAA Technical. Do we have an update of how those talks are going?
Unfortunately, I do not have an update. I do not have sight into what Mango is doing. It is a subsidiary, but it's a separate entity, again, another juristic person that also has its own board and line management that takes care of the affairs of the business. So they could be pursuing some negotiations with Technical in order to ensure that they continue to operate. The situation operationally is slightly different, whereas SAA has not commenced the normal commercial flights, as all customers would know, where there will be flights on a daily basis. We have not been operating at SAA level since the implementation of lockdown. Insofar as Mango is concerned, we are aware that they have been having operations since lockdown level 2. So that means that there are certain things that they would need to take care of, and we are also aware that they have also issued out a communique that gives assurance and comfort to their customers that they will continue to operate, notwithstanding the decision that has been communicated by SA Technical insofar as the suspension of services is concerned.
And if they don't find each other tonight as they're engaging in these sensitive talks, it's a couple of hours to go before we know if those flights will be grounded or not. What will it take then if Mango is not able to meet its obligation for the flights to resume?
I think the communique that has been sent out by Mango is quite clear. It indicates that whilst they are pursuing negotiations with Technical, the point that they communicated is that they give assurance to their customers that they will continue to transport their passengers into the weekend. So the message that went out there to affected carriers, including SAA, may not necessarily have that direct impact immediately. That is, insofar as the operations at Mango are concerned.
So could it have an impact next week if this impasse is not resolved?
If the impasse is not resolved, it could have an impact at least on SAA, because in as much as we are not having normal commercial operations, we do have planned charter flights that should be operating sometime next week. So everything is being done in order to avert that particular situation where there are disruptions insofar as the charter flights are concerned.